Hi everybody, this is a video to show you how to create a composite image for your mythological creatures. Now, before we get going, I want to talk to you about the tools that you are going to be learning through this tutorial, and hopefully you have your notes out and you have written these down. You're going to be learning how to create a composite image, and again, a composite image is an image that is created by different components brought in from different areas. So it's like a digital collage. You're going to learn how to use your selection tools. There are these three selection tools. There are other ones, but these are the three that you're going to be focusing on for this project. You've got your lasso tool, your quick selection tool, your object selection tool. Now, from those selection tools, that's what you are essentially going to be drawing around or selecting around the parts of the animal that you want to then cut out and paste onto other images. You are going to use your transform tool. This is how you are going to be resizing and warping or skewing your body parts so that they fit onto the other body. Your clone stamp is something that's pretty cool. It's going to allow you to learn textures or colors like fur or scales, and then paint it, clone it, and paint it onto other areas so that it looks like those body parts are fading together seamlessly. You're also going to learn how to adjust color. You're going to learn how to use your eraser tool with lessening the opacity for blending or changing the hardness or softness of the edge. Again, your goal is to make this composite image, this mythological fantasy creature, that feels unified, that looks believable. Now, you might use your smudge tool, and I know some of you guys have used your smudge tool before, but we don't want to over smudge because the smudge texture isn't necessarily very true to life. So what I want to show you is how to find your images. Now, I have this idea of taking a leopard, and I've landed on this picture, to take this leopard and maybe combine it with a deer or an antelope of some kind. So as you're looking for images and you're in Google Image, you can try to change your size to large, or as you find your image, and hopefully it's the correct body position that you want, and it's a nice clear picture, you want to look down at this bottom right hand corner, and if these numbers are above 600, you're probably going to be pretty good. So this is the resolution of this image. It's telling you that you have 1,500 pixels per inch or dots per inch by 1,000. So this is a pretty good size image. So then you would right click and save image as, and you're going to want to make a week 8 folder and make a folder in there that says myth creature or mythological creature. And I've already saved this one in there and I renamed it leopard. Now, if I then want to go and look for other images, that's fine. But you want to be very careful that both images or all of the images that you are looking for are really high quality, that the lighting looks similar. So it's not like one is taken at night or one is taken in shadow, or one, the light looks a little bit pinky because of the type of day that it was photographed at, versus one where you have a little bit more blue light in it. So you can kind of see this is like the quality of the light is very different in here versus here. This looks like it was maybe taken in the evening where there's like a lot of oranges and yellows and browns in the area, versus this, which has kind of like this greenish bluish hue to it. So we want to be very careful about the images that you take. Now to start this, we're going to, of course, be working in Photoshop. I'm going to go File, New, and I would like you to set a canvas that is 11 by 14, and we are going to set that resolution at 300 ppi. So it's kind of like our minimum that I want you to make sure that you do. You're not going to need to go any higher than that. If you do, it's actually probably going to overwhelm your computer right now, and it won't be happy with you. So somewhere in there is fine. Now, my images that I have are more of a landscape orientation, but some of you might have pictures that are more vertical. And so it's up to you if you want to have a landscape orientation or a vertical portrait orientation. So I'm going to say create. Now, to set my image in here, I'm going to go File, Place Embedded. And I want to tell you why I want you to do that. So that image of that leopard that's over here, it is a big quality image. It's got a lot of pixels for that. And that's too much for what I want in Photoshop. Now, it's not that Photoshop can't handle that, but it's that every single computer in this room, if everyone is working on really, really large images, we can kind of crash. So by setting your canvas and saying, I want you to work on this image that's 11 11 by 14, 300 resolution. It's a manageable size, but it still is a good enough size that if I print it, it's going to look really good. So I'm going to say File, Place Embedded, not File, Open. So if I say File, Place Embedded, and I find that leopard and I put it down and I hit Enter, it's going to control the size of that file. Versus if I went File, Open, and I open up that leopard, then if I take this and I say, hey, what's the image size? It's 20 inches by 13, which isn't huge, but this is what's interesting. It's only 72 pixels per inch on my resolution, which isn't very good. So that's why I like you to set a canvas and file place. Now I have this white on here that I want to get rid of. I could crop, I could use my crop tool, but I also can go up and press image trim, and then just say okay, and it's just gonna crop out that excess white. Now the next thing I want to draw your attention to is this little icon over here. So you can see there's your background layer, that's your canvas that you set. And then here's the image that I just placed. Now that little icon right there, that's a smart object layer. So that's the computer's telling you, or Photoshop is telling you, this layer right now, this image is protected. It's basically saying, I'm going to protect this picture until you tell me that you want to make real hardcore drastic changes to this, which we're going to be doing. So when you see that little thumbnail icon right there, you can choose to keep it if you want to protect that picture. Like maybe you're editing some family photos and you want to make sure that you always save that original file. Well, that's going to be there to save you and protect you. But for right now, we are going to be essentially cutting up and creating composites. We're going to be destroying these original photos. So we want to get rid of that. We're going to right click and say rasterize layer. That's going to allow us to make real changes to that photo. Now next, I'm going to go File, New again, and I'm going to set that exact same size of canvas because I want to again control the size of the files that I'm working on cutting apart and collecting together. So I'm going to go 11 by 14, 300 resolution, landscape orientation, and create. File, Place Embedded, and I think for this I'm going to use this deer. And the reason that I'm going to use this deer is because it's kind of in the same position, even though the deer's, twisting its body around. This head looks like I think I could fit it on here. I might need to do a little bit of warping, but I think I can fit that deer on here pretty successfully. I also am thinking about the size of the ears and this area in here, whereas I was looking at this antelope, but this antelope has these really cool big horns, and I think I would run out of room. So I'm going to use this leopard picture as my base, my foundation, and I don't have enough room to really add in those horns. So I'm going to choose this deer. So to trim this up, I'm going to go image, trim, and okay. And I'm going to right click here because I need to get rid of my smart object layer. I'm going to rasterize that. Now, next, what I need to do is I need to get I'm going to go back over here and I'm going to show you the tools that we're going to be working through. I'm going to start talking to you about these selection tools. So you have options, and options are good. So I'm hoping that options don't feel overwhelming to you. Selecting something in Photoshop is very important to understand. This is where you are telling the computer, I want you to work in this area. So right now, what I want to do is I want to take this deer head, I need to copy this deer head, and I'm going to paste it over here onto this leopard. Now to do that, I have some options. This right here is your lasso tools. The first tool that I'm going to show you is called just the regular lasso tool. Sometimes we call it the soft lasso because it's got curve to it. This is your polygonal lasso, and then you have your magnetic lasso tool, which I'm not going to use. I'm going to do the soft lasso. I also have my stylus pen in my hand. This is going to allow me to draw and trace over the edge of my deer. And I'm going to go as quick as I can without making a huge mess. Now I only really need that head, so I'm kind of going to cut that there. And you will do a little bit more effort, hopefully. And some of you are like, oh, I remember using this tool on the Notans. So this is going to give me my marching ants that are going to be marching around that deer. Now, the only thing about this is my hand is human and I'm not making, a great job here. So this tool sometimes is a good tool and sometimes it's not. It depends on your image, and it depends on, how tight you are with working on tracing. I'm going to press Control D because I want to show you a couple of others. So that's one tool that you could use. You also have this tool called your object selection tool. And this is going to allow you to draw your box and it's going to select your area. Now it's remembering that I liked that head. And so I can say select subject. You want to just put your current selection. You want to continue. I am going to say cancel. I actually want this right here and it's looking a little bit better than mine. It also would maybe pop out and jump on the whole deer. But right now I'm liking this right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to press Control C. So again, I've selected this area. My marching ants are running around it. I think this looks a little bit better than what I had with just freehand drawing it. So I pressed Control C, and now I'm going to come over to my leopard. I'm going to press Control V. And you can see that that just pasted it on its own layer. Now I could go in and take a little bit, of a closer look, and you can see it really didn't do that great of a job, but I think for this project, it might be okay. At least it's going to give you an idea of how I did this. Now I also could go back here and it's going to allow me to do some editing. I could smooth out my selection. So I could say I want to smooth my selection by, I don't know, maybe I want to say 3 pixels and say okay. And maybe that's going to give me a little bit more of a smoother selection. I could expand my selection. So that means it would push out my border. And maybe I want to say I want to expand it by 5. And let's see what that does. Yeah, it jumped out just a little bit. And maybe that's going to be better. I could feather my selection. So it's going to feather my radius, meaning my outer edge. I might want to even feather that a little more. Maybe I want to go feather by 10. I don't know. Let's see if that looks a little better. We'll have to see. Then I'm going to press Control C again. And I'm going to go back over here. And I'm going to press Control V again. And I'm going to kind of look at the 2 different deer heads and see the difference between those 2. I think I feathered a little bit too much. So I'm going to delete this layer here. Yes, and I'm going to right click and I'm going to delete this layer. Right click and delete and say yes. I'm going to come back here and I am going to go back to feather selection and I'm going to say I only want to feather by 7. Okay, and I might want to expand my selection a little bit more. Maybe I want to go by 8. Okay. That looks like a little too much. 6. Oh. Control Z, Control Z. Let's just leave it there. So hopefully you get an idea that with this you are able to change the borders. So Control C, come over here, Control V. That's not terrible. Something that I can do in here is I can erase some of this stuff out. So like where I've got some weirdness in here, I could erase a little bit of this out. So let's go into our eraser tool and I'm going to check my specs here. My size is a little, I don't necessarily want it so big, something a little bit more manageable. And I don't want it to be 100% hardness because that's going to give me that weird sharp edge. We don't want that. We want something that is a little bit more lighter, and maybe I want even softer than that. So if my hardness is closer to 0, it's going to be a little bit softer. So I'm going to take this and clean up, and maybe I want it even softer than that. Come over here and go hardness lower than that. So this is going to give me a softer edge. I also can change my opacity of my eraser tool. So if I want my eraser to be somewhat transparent so that it's not so harsh, I can do that as well. So the variance of that is that's a little bit see-through. There's even more see-through. Here's more opaque, meaning more solid. So you can play with your eraser tool if you need to clean up or erase out any weird edges that might have happened just from your selection. And of course, you've got your pens and you can get down real close. You can zoom in. Remember to zoom. You can press Alt and use the rolly ball on your mouse. You've also got your magnifying glass. So this is going to allow me to kind of get a little bit finer tuning with my selected area. So now I've got my leopard underneath, and you can see there is my deer head. So I'm on my deer head, but I'm now going to be showing you guys, and I don't think I showed you guys the object selection tool. Oh, I didn't show you the quick selection tool, but I could show you that another day. Some of you might need to use that, so we'll talk about that another day. For right now, I want to jump into the transform tool. So I have showed you a little bit about erasers. I want to show you about the transform tool. So with the transform tool, when you're on a layer, I can press Control T. So Control T is transform. This is going to allow me to resize this deer. But you're like, but that's not going to be big enough because that cat is like, you know, it's right, it's still bigger, right? So this isn't going to necessarily work. Yes, it will. So I'm going to make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to lower that kind of to like where the eyes of the animals are kind of matching. Now I've got to do a couple things. Number one, I'm going to warp this deer's neck to be just a little bit larger, but I'm also going to be clone stamping a little bit of the back of this leopard out to try to get rid of a little bit of that leopard. So when I'm in Control T, I'm going to hit right click and press warp. That's going to allow me to move and manipulate, but I don't want to do so much that I start to warp the deer's face too much. But what I can do is I can just start to widen it a little bit and change. Oh, I don't want to do that. Somewhere in there maybe might be a little bit better. Okay. Okay. So now I've got that deer head on top. And what I've got to start doing now is I'm going to be starting to do some clone stamping. So clone stamp is pretty cool, but it also can be kind of wild. So I need to think, do I want to get rid of the cat behind here, or do I want to pull this deer out and make the cat kind of have this deer texture? And I think that might be what I want to do. So your clone stamp is right here above your eraser if you're doubled up on your toolbar, and you're going to choose just that first top copy. Now the clone stamp, what you're going to do is you're going to learn a little bit of this deer texture, and then you're going to paint it on a layer that is on top of the leopard. And the reason I want you to not paint on the leopard is because, again, layers are your friend, not your enemy, and you're going to need to do that. So I'm on my deer layer, and I'm going to learn a little bit of this area. So I'm holding Alt with my cursor, holding Alt and learning. Then I'm going to jump down here, and then I'm going to paint. Jump back up, hold Alt, learn a little bit of this deer's fur, jump down, and paint. Jump back up, learn a little bit, and jump down and paint. Now I am going to have to do a little bit on top because I have this little highlight that's there. from where the light was hitting the back of the deer. So I'm going to jump up on top and I'm going to make a new layer. And then on this one, I'm going to have to jump back down here, learn a little bit of my deer, jump back up, paint, and I'm kind of tapping as I go. Now that looks a little bit funny, so I might want to change the opacity of that layer, which is again why we like to have everything on its own layer. I still see that weird little line there. So I'm gonna go back down here, hold Alt, learning a little bit of that deer's fur, jump back up, adding some more on top. Maybe I gotta go a little higher up on my opacity and keep adding until I feel like I get rid of that. Now, I see an area that I could use my eraser for, and it was right in here. So I can zoom in. And if I need to hide that leopard to help me see a little bit better, I can. I'm going to get my eraser, and I'm going to clean up some of this edge right in here. Actually, my opacity is a little higher. Oh, it might be even on this layer down here. That's where that is. Yeah. All right, so that might be down on this layer here. Okay, so as I'm kind of working and tweaking this, it's gonna allow me to use my clone stamp to try to create a little bit of a flow here. Now, if I go to my leopard layer though, I don't need these ears, right? So I kind of want to get rid of that leopard's head. Sorry for the bell. I need to get rid of the leopard's head so that it doesn't poke through in certain areas right in there. So I'm going to hide my deer head. I'm going to go down onto my leopard, and I'm going to use my clone stamp tool. And I'm going to learn the background. So I'm going to learn the background. Again, I'm going to make a new layer, and then I'm going to paint the background. And you got to go little by little. Learn some of the background, jump up to the layer, paint the background. You can see I'm already recreating that. Isn't that kind of wild? Go down, learn my background, jump up, paint over it. And you're trying to make it look as close to it as possible as you want. Now, hardness 0, probably a pretty good thing to do because I need this to be very soft. My background is very soft. So I'm going to learn a little bit, come up, paint a little bit. Go down, learn a little bit of this different color background over here. And I'm going to paint this out here. Now, hopefully you are following along with yours. Maybe you're able to do a split screen. And I can put my deer head back in and see where I'm at. And I can see I've got some funniness in certain areas that I need to keep tweaking, but I'm not going to spend as much time on this as you guys are going to be spending on your final. That does not look quite right. Oh, I don't want the whiskers right there. All right, hopefully you're kind of getting the idea. This is looking a little too funny in the background, but I'm going to change the opacity of my clone stamp because my background is feeling a little, my background is feeling just a little bit too blotchy and I need it to be softer. Okay, I'm going to just kind of stop this here. All right. I don't have one right at the moment for you. Can you come tomorrow? Okay, so if I put this layer here on top, I'm still seeing that I've got areas that need to be clone stamped out. So I need to do a little bit more work with getting my my background and covering up this cat. So let me go to my opacity here. Learning my background, jumping up, getting rid of that cat. There we go. Getting better and better. So you can see how you could keep going on this. Now, the next thing I want to look at is this deer head. I got to do something in this area to try to get rid of this bottom because I need the two to kind of seamlessly flow together. So I'm going to, I think, use my eraser tool for right now. I know there are other ways to do this, but I'm going to use my eraser with my opacity to be a little lower. And I'm going to start erasing out. I'm going to be on my deer layer. I'm going to start erasing out my background or the bottom of that deer head to try to kind of merge these two. Now, since my opacity is only at 38%, it's going to allow me to kind of buff it out. So the more times I go over it, that I scroll and scribble and scribble and scribble and erase and erase and erase, I'm going to slowly erase more. I can even get my opacity to be a little bit less, like way less, and it's going to allow me to do that even a little bit more softer. So I can kind of fade these two things together. And that's kind of cool because it's not, I might not even have to use clone stamp to move that leopard fur onto the deer, but I think I still kind of might want to. And I know I've got some whiskers there and they're not looking perfect. And this edge right here, I need to do something with this edge because that's not looking quite right. So let's do a little clone stamping of leopard fur onto my deer, on the deer's neck. So I'm going to do a little learning of leopard fur here. I might even make my size be a little bit bigger. Yeah, maybe learn a little bit bigger. Let's go learn a little bit of this area and jump up onto a new layer on top and paint it. And since it's on its own layer, I can change my opacity. So we can kind of do something like that. Go back down, learn a little bit, jump up, paint a little, tap it where I kind of want it to be. I wonder if I could even do, ooh, that's kind of an interesting idea. All right, so I'm playing with pulling some texture and some pattern of those fur up into different areas. So we got something that's starting to look a little bit better, but it's still not perfect. Mostly I'm feeling very strange about this area. Where is that? Ah, I see. This right here might need to be cleaned up a little bit. So I'm going to get my eraser, get my size a little. Still probably want 0 hardness. I'm going to see if I can come in and erase out. I don't even know where that is. Oh, it's on the leopard. Okay, I gotcha. So this would be where I need to do some clone stamping of the back and try to create a new back edge right in there. Okay, so hopefully you're starting to understand how this project works. Now, let me just go back to our tools and make sure we've gone over everything. Oh, color adjustment. Let's talk about color adjustment. Although mine's not necessarily needing to be adjusted so much. But let's say that I wanted the head of my deer to be a little different colored because I need it to match something else. Like I need it to match the body. So when I'm on this layer, what I can do is go up to image adjustment, and I can change my color balance. So I can change the way that deer head has, how the balance of the color is in there. And it's not going to make much of a difference for me because I think my two colors are kind of working well together.